Hello, and thank you for tuning into this week's episode of Bite Size Cybercrime, the podcast where we discuss cybercrimes and cybersecurity news. Today we will be talking about a new free browser-based VPN that FireFox is launching with their latest update. Currently, it is in the testing phase, so not everyone is going to get it right away, but this leaves us with something interesting to talk about nonetheless. You'll get up to 50 gigabytes of free monthly VPN traffic. However, the VPN only protects your browser and nothing else on your device. So if you're torrenting from a different application or browser without a VPN, you may still get a letter from your ISP telling you to stop it. Mozilla does have a system-wide VPN, which is not free, however, and is unrelated, though the branding is similar, so I could see this being a bit confusing. Some people prefer to use a VPN for privacy reasons. FireFox stated that oftentimes people on your same Wi-Fi network could intercept your traffic and see what you're doing, but this is only partially true. Most websites these days are encrypted via HTTPS anyways, preventing people who do this from actually seeing what you're doing. They can see what websites you're browsing, but not actually what you're doing on them. If I'm checking my bank account balance at the airport and someone tries to sniff my traffic, they can see that I'm on the website for my bank, but they can't grab my password and they can't see my balance or how much I've spent or my account number or any of that. They could try to craft a phishing email for me to see later, knowing what bank I use, but people can also kind of do that anyways. However, if you're accessing certain sites you'd rather keep private, this browser-based VPN may still be a good option, mostly for piracy or embarrassing things. What's also interesting is to conserve your data, you can select which websites use the VPN. So if I want to use the VPN for my bank website just in case, but I don't want it active for YouTube or Twitch because that will just gobble down my 50 gigs of data like nothing, I can simply disable the VPN for those sites. This may also be useful for certain countries with blocked content, although it doesn't seem like you can switch regions to access the content from different regions. What you can access is probably going to depend on where the servers are hosted and what IP you get from it. This could still potentially help some users out, but this is a bit of a maybe until it has wider testing. Some people on Reddit have criticized this for not giving you enough data or not offering full device protection, and what I have to say about this is it's expensive to reroute a lot of traffic, and it's also literally free. Some people have had concerns about FireFox selling user data, as even I've said this, free VPNs are not really free. They sell your data to get money, and FireFox has stated that not only do they have no intention to do so, but that they don't even collect your data behind the technical data required to support the stability of the product. For example, data on whether your connection to a website has succeeded or failed. My overall takeaway from this is it's not a particularly groundbreaking addition and won't really do much for your overall security posture if you're afraid of hackers stealing your data. That's still something you mostly need to look out for in the email phishing or even text phishing department. But it will allow for increased privacy on networks that are public, and it's certainly not a bad addition to a browser. I would honestly prefer this alternative over a paid VPN if I just need it for browser-based activities. The 50 gigabyte data cap can still be problematic for some, especially those who have a lot of browser activity, but with the ability to restrict it to certain tabs, this may not even be that much of a problem. As I mentioned a little earlier, it doesn't seem like you're going to be able to change your regions, and so the primary purpose of this VPN is to mask your IP address and not do things like access Netflix from another country. And if we're being real, a lot of the reason many non-technical people get something like a VPN, at least based on many of the YouTube sponsorships I've seen, is so they can access Netflix in another country, but, well, VPNs have a lot more uses than just that. I will also note that this isn't really going to prevent you from being tracked even with the IP masking, because a lot of internet-based tracking isn't IP-based, it's cookies, accounts, and data that you give to websites. Whether you have a VPN active, it's not going to stop certain third-party cookies from following you website to website and gathering data about your web browsing activities. That's why it's important to not just use a VPN as a one-and-done solution, but if you really do care about your web privacy, to also consider using browser extensions that do things like block trackers and third-party cookies. I personally use Privacy Badger for this, but there's quite a lot of them as well. Due to the browser-based nature of this VPN, many people, including myself, even hesitate to call it a VPN. It does act more as a proxy, with the main purpose being hiding your IP address rather than a VPN, which is to encrypt all of your communications, though it still does do the latter, which is important to note and is still why I call it a VPN. A proxy inherently doesn't involve any encryption at all. It really just masks your location. Thank you to Bleeping Computer for initially reporting on this story, as well as FireFox for being open about this VPN project and all that it entails. I'm really interested to kind of see how this goes and even test it out myself. And of course, thank you for tuning into this week's episode of Bite-Sized Cybercrime, and until next time, stay secure.